So everyone wants to be sustainable, but nobody wants to pay for it. Now, admittedly, that's a really aggressive statement. It's extreme. Everyone and no one, but I stand by it. Let me give you a little bit of background. So when I think about everyone, I mean, when we think about tomorrow, we don't want things to fall apart. We want to at least maintain, if not improve, our current standard of living. And I think I'm on pretty safe ground by saying that everybody wants that. And then as far as nobody wants to pay for it, if I asked for a raise of hands and said all of your purchases are going to go up tomorrow, how many of you guys want to do that? I didn't see any hands. So, nobody wants to pay for it. What I want to do today is raise awareness that when we don't intentionally pay for sustainability, we pay for it in unintentional ways. And I want to give you an example from the plastics industry. And what I put here on the screen is an ideal cycle of plastic production and usage. In an ideal world, we would produce plastic, and then we would use it, and we would reuse it, and then when it breaks, we would repair it, and when we can't repair it anymore, we would recycle it and start the cycle over again. We would only produce plastic if we needed more in the chain. Unfortunately, this is not what happens. The World Economic Forum, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and McKinsey & Company did that study, and they published it a few years ago. And in this diagram, you see a circle. And what they did is they said how much plastic is made in the world just for packaging. And they said on an annual basis, we produce as a society 78 million tons of plastic for packaging every year. Now, if you follow that loop around the top, and if we just go clockwise for a minute, you see that 2% of it makes its way all the way back around. 2% makes its way in a closed loop recycling. That means that closed loop recycling, that's basically a bottle. Starts as a bottle, and then after I've used it and I've recycled it and I've produced something else again with it, it's a bottle again. So it stayed in the same quality. Now, some things were captured for recycling, but they were downgraded or cascaded recycling. This means that we started with the bottle, but when we finished the cycle, we actually made a carpet or some other lower quality item that we're probably not going to recycle back up to a bottle. Now, if you do the math on that, that was only 10% that's really even getting recycled. If we take it a little bit further, though, what happens to the rest? 4% of it was lost in the recycling effort. You see that at the top. Now, if you go a little bit further down, we took 14% of it and incinerated it. That means that we burned it to produce energy. And you can imagine what that did for our carbon footprint. Now, it gets worse because 40% is landfilled every year. That means 40% of the plastic that we made for packaging, we end up digging a hole, we put it all in there, and then we cover it over with dirt and hope to forget about it. But it gets worse because at the end we have 32% that is leakage. 32% of the plastic that we make every year for packaging leaks into our environment. That means it goes into our oceans, our rivers, our streams, our parks. It ends up in the environment that we live in. That's pretty ugly. In fact, if we take the math a little bit further on that, right? Our track record on plastic packaging is 90% waste. That means 90% of all the product that we make every year for packaging, which is only used probably for one short time at the very beginning of its life cycle, it was then wasted, thrown away, leaked into the environment, burned. Put it a different way, that means that we got 10% right. Could you imagine going home to your mom and dad in grade school and saying, I got 10% on my math test today? That's an F. In fact, that's not an F, that's a super F. That's bad news. And if you're not familiar with the letter grading that some schools use, F is a failure. That's really, really poor. And that's what's happening with us in the plastics life cycle right now for packaging. We are failing. If you want to put it into financial terms, it's about $100 billion a year. Who would be satisfied with spending $100 billion and then throwing it away every year? But that's what we do, and we shouldn't be satisfied. We can't be satisfied with numbers like that. So then the next question is, why are we using plastic at all? Can't we get rid of plastic? Well, it's a little bit harder than that. When you look at plastic, it's actually quite useful. And let me just put together the story for plastic a little bit. It's durable. We know it's sturdy. If I drop it on the ground, it's not likely to break as opposed to my glass jar. It's resistant to chemicals. I can put all sorts of things in my plastic bottle, but I probably can't do that with my metal bottle. It can handle high and low temperatures. For example, I put my food when I'm done with it into a plastic container. Then I take that container and I stick it in my freezer at below freezing temperatures. Then I pull it out of that container, or out of the freezer, and I stick it in my microwave and jack the temperature back up. Plastic can handle those swings in temperatures. It's a really great substance. It's also lightweight. When I think about plastic, I'm a finance guy, so when I think about it in terms of shipping costs, if I'm putting something in a very lightweight container and shipping it around, I'm paying a lot less fuel. I'm also having a lot smaller carbon footprint because of all the fuel costs of trying to move things around. It's versatile. Plastic can take any shape, any form, just about any color. And it's recyclable. We know we're not good at it. 10% good is not good yet, but I believe we're going to get better. And it's affordable. It's cheaper than wood, it's cheaper than metal, it's cheaper than glass. So when it comes down to it, why do we still use plastic? There's a number of reasons. So then, is there anything that we can do to fix the problems with plastic then? Well, when I look at the problems of plastic, I see two main problems. The first problem is that it's made from oil at the beginning of its life cycle. We're taking a limited resource on this earth and we're using it all up to create something that we just throw away. The second problem with plastic, and we've already talked about it, is at the end of its life cycle, we throw it away, it's wasted, it pollutes our environment. Is there any way that we can improve that? And there's actually a lot of ways that we can improve that. There are a number of companies out there, a number of technologies that people are trying to work on and improve these two issues. One I'm just going to mention tonight is bioplastics. And when you throw bio at the beginning of a term, it sounds really exciting, but what does it really mean? So let's define what a bioplastic is. It's one of two things. It's either bio-based, means that it was made from something that can be grown over and go over. We didn't make it out of oil, which is a limited resource. We made it from sugar or corn or something that we can make over and over and over. An example out there is actually bio-PE. So there's a plastic that's bio-based. Or if it's in the bioplastics realm, it could also be biodegradable. That means at the end of its life cycle, when we throw it away, it'll actually break down and become food for microorganisms. Think a tree that falls over in the forest, it breaks down and becomes food for other things. And there's an example of that, PBAT. There's also a plastic that's pretty exciting called PLA, that's both biodegradable and biosourced. So there's a plastic out there that could solve both of our problems. It's environmentally friendly on the front end, and it's good for the environment on the back end. This is great news. So you're probably asking yourself three questions, and if you're not, I hope you are. I'm going to point out the three questions right now. One, why haven't I heard about PLA? Two, why haven't all plastics been converted to PLA? And three, why is a finance guy giving us this presentation on a new technology? Okay, it's fair. Those three questions, I'm going to ask you to hold on to them for just a minute, and I want to talk to you about how decisions are made. Economists for years have been talking to us about self-interest. They said that whenever we make a decision, we make it based on our own self-interest. We want to know what's in it for me with them. What's in it for me when I make a decision, when I make an investment on my personal finances? I want to know what's in it for me. A lot of times we unfortunately break this down to just money. We think what's in it for me, I'm going to get rich. But there's a lot of other things that could be in it for you. For example, if we go back to that plastics example, if you take your plastic bottle, you have a choice. You could throw it away in the black bin and it just goes to landfill or maybe incineration, or you could take that plastic bottle and you can stick it in the blue bin for recycling. Maybe you put it in the blue bin because it just makes you feel good. You feel like you're making a difference in the world. That's what's in it for you sometimes. It's not just all about money. Now, if we as individuals are looking at our own self-interest, and our self-interest is broader than just money, I would propose that corporations act in their own self-interest as well. And it's not always just about money. In fact, corporate boards are made up of individuals, just like you and me. And I want to talk to you about decisions that are made in boardrooms. And my experience in boardrooms is the people that are in those rooms are trying to figure out what's in it for them, but they're also good people that are trying to make a difference in the world. They're trying to improve the world around them. But boards have a lot of decisions they've got to make, and so they've got to boil the decisions down quickly into a manner that they can do something with. And they might look at criteria like intangibles. You know, what's going to be the PR impact? You know, what's going to be the impact on the environment? What's going to be the impact on our employees? Do our customers care about this? And how do we best meet the needs of our customers? They might also look at an internal rate of return, or what's my return on this investment? If I invest this money, am I going to get 10% back? Am I going to get 2% back? You know, what's my return? They might also look at a payback period. What is the amount of time that it's going to take for me to recoup the costs that I put in originally for the investment? They also look at net present value. If I add up all the amount that I'm going to get for the investment, and then I subtract from that all the costs that I have to put into the investment, that's a net present value. So when you look at these, you're probably looking at it thinking, well, those last three are all very, very money heavy. They're finance heavy. And yeah, they are, because the boards have to make quick decisions. And this is important. I want you guys to remember this, that the amount of money available is always smaller than the number of ideas to invest in. So every board out there might have 50 ideas that they can invest in, but they've got to only, or maybe they only have money to invest in 2. So you've got to boil it down quickly, and sometimes the financial metrics are the ones that drive some of the decisions. With that in mind, though, now that we understand how boards might be making decisions, I want to talk about other groups that might be thinking about this WIFM decision, specifically around plastic. If I'm thinking about plastic, and I heard about this new technology, PLA, what might I be doing about it? Well, if you're a PLA producer, and full disclosure, I work for a company that makes PLA. So, I'll tell you, what we talk about in our boardroom is how much can we sell? How much can we make? And if we make it, what can we sell it at? What are people willing to pay? And what are our costs going to be? Can we even make money on this? Because if we make the bad decision, our company will not be in business in a year. If we make the wrong decisions, our company is not sustainable. So sustainability is important in the boardroom too. Other groups that might be thinking about this are plastic users. So if I think about a plastic user, people that buy plastic, they're wondering, if I buy this new technology, PLA, and I turn around and sell it to my customers, can I recoup the costs that I put into it? Are my customers willing to pay for it? And maybe even more importantly, if I don't offer PLA, are my customers going to go elsewhere? Will I lose business out of this? Another group that's thinking about this decision is consumers, and we're all consumers. The way that we address this question is, am I willing to pay a premium for a plastic that is actually good for the environment? Am I willing to vote with my dollars for a better environment in the future? And ultimately, which companies am I willing to reward with my purchasing power? Because when you make a decision with your dollars, or your euros, or your renminbis, whatever currency you're using, you're making a statement to other companies and saying, this is what I want more of. I want you to make more of this because this is what I'm willing to buy. Other people that are involved in this decision, that are struggling with this decision, be recyclers. And remember, recyclers, they do the dirty work, right? They're the ones that have to take all of our trash, separate it, and then try to create something that's going to be of value. Because they need to be sustainable as well. They need to make enough profit to keep them in business, to pay their employees. And finally, governments are involved too. Governments are trying to decide what behaviors they want to encourage and which ones they want to discourage. Ultimately, what do their constituents reward with their votes? So with that in mind, we have a lot of people that are struggling with this decision. I want to come back to those 3 questions I asked you to hold on to. So why haven't I heard about PLA? One of the main reasons is it's a relatively new technology. It's only been around for a few years now. And quite frankly, it's going to take time for something like this to build up in the consciousness of the consumer. It's going to take time for people who make things out of plastic to realize its benefits and to put them into practice. The second question is, why haven't all plastics been converted to PLA? Well, if you think about it, there's only a few companies right now that currently make PLA. Their total production is less than 0.1% of the annual plastic production in the world. So it's going to take time for those companies to build up their capabilities to be able to convert more of our plastic. But the great news is there are people that are out there that are trying to make a difference. Now, the biggest question here, and you guys got a good laugh out of earlier, why is a finance guy telling us about this new technology? I want to tell you a little bit about my evolution on sustainability. For me, sustainability, I remember hearing about it early in my career, and I would see it as a line item in somebody's budget and think, what are we spending this on? I don't understand this initiative. And I remember having conversations with my colleagues where we'd say, why are we spending on this? We can't afford this. Remember, we had 50 other projects that we're trying to invest in. Why is this one bubbling to the top? That was my initial exposure. After a period of time, though, I've had a paradigm shift. A period of time where I've actually received some education and a better understanding. 2 things that come out of it. One, I've realized that our customers actually want us to do good things for the environment. And they'll reward us if we do the right thing as a company. 2, I've also realized that we as business leaders, and in any case, when we're talking about our costs, we can actually reduce our costs, improve our bottom line when we use and initiate green projects. Things that are good for the environment. When you think about your windmills, your solar panels, your LED lights, there are actually bottom line benefits for doing these green initiatives. And what I've seen in myself and in my peers is that that evolution has led to the CFO to becoming now the champion of sustainability in their companies. Rather than saying at the beginning, stop doing green, I can't afford it, the CFOs are now saying, bring me more green initiatives, we can't afford not to do it. So with that in mind, I really want to get to the heart of my message today, and I have two different things, 2 different groups I want to speak to. First, I want to speak to businessmen and women, people who are in the mix right now trying to do something to make a difference. 3 thoughts for you. 1, are we creating businesses that can survive? Not just the quarter, not just the year, not just the next long-term plan cycle, but for the long haul. Are we creating sustainable businesses? And in conjunction with that, are we creating an environment where our employees, our customers, our families actually can thrive and survive the future. And finally, from the business community, I want to make sure that we understand that people are not going to choose a sustainable solution if it doesn't compete with a non-sustainable solution. It's at least got to be in the mix. It's got to be competitive on cost. It's got to be competitive on the technological benefits. We need to make sure that we're bringing forth ideas that actually make this world better. So that was my first group that I wanted to talk to. I wanted to talk to businessmen and women. But now let me talk to all of us, when it comes to sustainability. And the real question here is, are we willing to put in the work and effort to come up the evolution curve on sustainability? What are we willing to do to make a difference? Realizing that when we buy something, we're making a vote. When we say that we want a certain kind of product and we let it be known, we're making a vote. We have a lot of power as consumers, and let's make sure that we use that power. Let's get educated on what's in it for us. Because everyone wants to be sustainable, and we can't afford not to be. Thank you.